Chapter 3 of Elizabethan Sea-Dogs by William Wood. This LibriVox is in the public domain. Chapter 3 Life Afloat in Tudor Times. Two stories from Hakluyt's voyages will illustrate what sort of work the English were attempting in America about 1530, near the middle of King Henry's reign. The success of Master Hawkins and the failure of Master Hore are quite typical of several other adventures in the New World. Old Mr. William Hawkins of Plymouth, a man for his wisdom, valor, experience, and skill in sea causes, much esteemed and beloved of King Henry VIII, and being one of the principal sea captains in the west parts of England in his time, not contented with the short voyages commonly then made only to the known coasts of Europe, armed out a tall and goodly ship of his own, of the burthen of 250 tons, called the Pole of Plymouth, wherewith he made 3 long and famous voyages unto the coast of Brazil, a thing in those days very rare, especially to our nation. Hawkins first went down the Guinea coast of Africa, where he trafficked with the negroes, and took of them oliphants' teeth and other commodities which that place yieldeth; and so arriving on the coast of Brazil, used there such discretion, and behaved himself so wisely with those savage people, that he grew into great familiarity and friendship with them; insomuch that in his second voyage one of the savage kings of the country of Brazil was contented to take ship with him, and to be transported hither into England. This king was presented unto King Henry VIII. The king and all the nobility did not a little marvel, for in his cheeks were holes, and therein small bones planted, which in his country was reputed for a great bravery. The poor Brazilian monarch died on his voyage back, which made Hawkins fear for the life of Martin Cockeram, whom he had left in Brazil as a hostage. However, the Brazilians took Hawkins's word for it, and released Cockeram, who lived another 40 years in Plymouth. Old Mr. William Hawkins was the father of Sir John Hawkins, Drake's companion in arms, whom we shall meet later. He was also the grandfather of Sir Richard Hawkins, another naval hero, and of the second William Hawkins, one of the founders of the greatest of all chartered companies, the Honourable East India Company. Hawkins knew what he was about. Master Hore did not. Hore was a well-meaning, plausible fellow, good at taking up new-fangled ideas, bad at carrying them out, and the very cut of a wildcat company promoter, except for his honesty. He persuaded divers young lawyers of the Inns of Court and Chancery to go to Newfoundland. 120 men set off in this modern ship of fools, which ran into Newfoundland at night and was wrecked. There were no provisions, and none of the divers lawyers seems to have known how to catch a fish. After trying to live on wild fruit, they took to eating each other, in spite of Master Hore, who stood up boldly and warned them of the fire to come. Just then a French fishing smack came in, whereupon the lawyers seized her, put her wretched crew ashore, and sailed away with all the food she had. The outraged Frenchmen found another vessel, chased the lawyers back to England, and laid their case before the king, who out of his royal bounty reimbursed the Frenchmen, and let the divers lawyers go scot-free. Hawkins and Hore and others like them were the heroes of travellers' tales. But what was the ordinary life of the sailor who went down to the sea in the ships of the Tudor age? There are very few quite authentic descriptions of life afloat before the end of the 16th century, and even then we rarely see the ship and crew about their ordinary work. Everybody was all agog for marvellous discoveries. Nobody, least of all a seaman, bothered his head about describing the daily routine on board. We know, however, that it was a lot of almost incredible hardship. Only the fittest could survive. Elizabethan landsmen may have been quite as prone to mistake comfort for civilization as most of the world is said to be now. Elizabethan sailors, when afloat, most certainly were not, and for the simple reason that there was no such thing as real comfort in a ship. Here are a few verses from the oldest genuine English sea song known. They were written down in the 15th century, before the discovery of America, and were probably touched up a little by the scribe. The original manuscript is now in Trinity College, Cambridge. It is a true nautical composition, a very rare thing indeed, for genuine sea songs didn't often get into print and weren't enjoyed by landsmen when they did. The setting is that of a merchantman carrying passengers whose discomforts rather amuse the shipmen. Anon the master commandeth fast to his shipmen in all the haste, to dress them line up soon about the mast, their tackling to make. With how hissa then they cry, what how, mate, thou standest too nigh, thy fellow may not haul thee by. Thus they begin to crake (shout). A boy or twain anon up stane (go aloft), and over thwart the sail yard lane (lie). Ye how, Talia, the remnant crien (cry), and pull with all their might. Bestow the boat, boatswain, anon, that our pilgrims may play thereon, for some are like to cough and groan ere it be full midnight. Haul the bowline, now veer the sheet, cook, make ready anon our meat. Our pilgrims have no lust to eat, I pray God give them rest. Go to the helm, what ho, no nearer. Steward, fellow, a pot of beer ye shall have, sir, with good cheer, anon all of the best. Ye how, Trussa, haul in the brails, thou haulest not, by God thou failsest. Oh, see how well our good ship sails, and thus they say among. This mean while the pilgrims lie, and have their bowls all fast them by, and cry after hot malvoisie, their health for to restore. Some lay their books on their knee, and read so long they cannot see. Alas, mine head will split in three, thus saith one poor wight. A sack of straw were there right good, for some must lay them in their hood. I had as lief be in the wood, without or meat or drink. For when that we shall go to bed, the pump is nigh our beddes head, a man he were as good be dead, as smell thereof the stink. How hissa is still used aboard deep water men, as ho hissa instead of ho hoist away. What ho mate is also known afloat, though dying out. Ye how Talia is yo yo tally, or tally and belay, which means hauling aft and making fast the sheet of a mainsail or foresail. What ho no nearer is what ho no higher now, but old salts remember no nearer, and it may be still extant. Sea sickness seems to have been the same as ever, so was the desperate effort to pretend one was not really feeling it, and cry after hot malvoisie, their health for to restore. Here is another sea song, one sung by the Sea-Dogs themselves. The doubt is whether the marshalmen are navy men, as distinguished from merchant service men aboard a king's ship, or whether they are soldiers who want to take all sailors down a peg or two. This seems the more probable explanation. Soldiers ranked sailors afloat in the 16th century, and Drake's was the first fleet in the world in which seamen admirals were allowed to fight a purely naval action. We be three poor mariners, newly come from the seas. We spend our lives in jeopardy, while others live at ease. We care not for those martial men that do our states disdain, but we care for those merchantmen that do our states maintain. A third old sea song gives voice to the universal complaint that landsmen cheat sailors who come home flush of gold. For sailors they be honest men, and they do take great pains, but landmen and ruffling lads do rob them of their gains. Here, too, is some cordial advice against the wiles of the sea, addressed to all rash young men who think to advance their decaying fortunes by navigation, as most of the sea dogs and gentlemen adventurers like Gilbert, Raleigh, and Cavendish tried to do. You merchantmen of Billingsgate, I wonder how you thrive. You bargain with men for 6 months, and pay them but for 5. This was an abuse that took a long time to die out. Even well on in the 19th century, and sometimes even on board of steamers, victualling was only by the lunar month, though service went by the calendar. A cursed cat with thrice 3 tails doth much increase our woe, is a poetical way of putting another seaman's grievance. People who regret that there is such a discrepancy between genuine sea songs and shore-going imitations will be glad to know that the Mermaid is genuine, though the usual air to which it was sung afloat was harsh and decidedly inferior to the one used ashore. This example of the old four bitters, so called because sung from the forebitts, a convenient mass of stout timbers near the foremast, did not luxuriate in the repetitions of its shore-going rival, with a comb and a glass in her hand, etc. Solo. On Friday morn, as we set sail, it was not far from land. Oh, there I spied a fair pretty maid, with a comb and a glass in her hand. Chorus. The stormy winds did blow, and the raging seas did roar, while we poor sailors went to the tops, and the landlubbers laid below. The anonymous author of a curious composition entitled The Complaint of Scotland, written in 1548, seems to be the only man who took more interest in the means than in the ends of seamanship. He was undoubtedly a landsman, but he loved the things of the sea, and his work is well worth reading as a vocabulary of the lingo that was used on board a Tudor ship. When the seamen sang it sounded like an echo in a cave. Many of the outlandish words were Mediterranean terms which the scientific Italian navigators had brought north. Others were of Oriental origin, which was very natural in view of the long connection between East and West at sea. Admiral, for instance, comes from the Arabic for a commander-in-chief. Amir al-Bahr means commander of the sea. Most of the nautical technicalities would strike a seaman of the present day as being quite modern. The 16th century skipper would be readily understood by a 20th century helmsman in the case of such orders as these: keep full and by, luff, conner, steady, keep close. Our modern sailor in the Navy, however, would be hopelessly lost in trying to follow directions like the following: make ready your cannons, middle culverins, bastard culverins, falcons, sakers, slings, headsticks, murderers, passevolants, bazils, dogs, crook, arquebuses, calivers, and hail shot. Another look at life afloat in the 16th century brings us once more into touch with America, for the old sea dog directions for the taking of a prize were admirably summed up in the Seaman's Grammar, which was compiled by Captain John Smith, sometime governor of Virginia and admiral of New England, Pocahontas Smith in fact. A sail, how bears she? To windward or leeward? Set him by the compass. He stands right ahead, or on the weather bow or lee bow. Let fly your colours, if you have a consort, else not. Out with all your sails, a steady man at the helm, give him chase. He holds his own. No, we gather on him, captain. Out goes his flag and pendants, also his waistcloths and top armings, which is a long red cloth, that goeth round about the ship on the outsides of all her upper works and fore and main tops, as well for the countenance and grace of the ship as to cover the men from being seen. He furls and slings his main yard. In goes his spritsail. Thus they strip themselves into their fighting sails, which is only the foresail, the main and fore topsails, because the rest should not be fired nor spoiled. Besides, they would be troublesome to handle, hinder our sights, and the using of our arms. He makes ready his close fights fore and aft, bulkheads set up to cover men under fire. Every man to his charge! Douse your topsail to salute him for the sea. Hail him with a noise of trumpets. Whence is your ship? Of Spain. Whence is yours? Of England. Are you merchants or men of war? We are of the sea. He waves us to leeward with his drawn sword, calls out Amain for the King of Spain, and springs his luff, brings his vessel close by the wind. Give him a chase piece with your broadside, and run a good berth ahead of him. Done, done. We have the wind of him, and now he tacks about. Tack about also, and keep your luff. Be yare at the helm. Edge in with him. Give him a volley of small shot, also your prow and broadside as before, and keep your luff. He pays us shot for shot. Well, we shall requite him. Edge in with him again. Begin with your bow pieces, proceed with your broadside, and let her fall off with the wind to give him also your full chase, your weather broadside, and bring her round so that the stern may also discharge, and your tacks close aboard again. The wind veers, the sea goes too high to board her, and we are shot through and between wind and water. Try the pump, bear up the helm, sling a man overboard to stop the leaks, that is, truss him up around the middle in a piece of canvas and a rope, with his arms at liberty, with a mallet and plugs lapped in oakum and well tarred, and a tarpaulin clout which he will quickly beat into the holes the bullets made. What cheer, mates? Is all well? All's well. Then make ready to bear up with him again. With all your great and small shot, charge him, board him, thwart the hawse on the bow, midships, or rather than fail on his quarter, or make fast your grapplings to his close fights, and sheer off, which would tear his cover down. Captain, we are foul of each other, and the ship is on fire. Cut anything to get clear, and smother the fire with wet cloths. In such a case they will be presently such friends as to help one the other all they can to get clear, lest they should both burn together and so sink. And if they be generous, and the fire be quenched, they will drink kindly one to the other, heave their cans overboard, and begin again as before. Chirurgeon, look to the wounded, and wind up the slain, and give them 3 guns for their funerals. Swabber, make clean the ship. Purser, record their names. Watch, be vigilant to keep your berth to windward, that we lose him not in the night. Gunners, sponge your ordnance. Soldiers, scour your pieces. Carpenters, about your leaks. Boatswain and the rest, repair sails and shrouds. Cook, see you observe your directions against the morning watch. Boy, hallo, is the kettle boiled? Aye, aye, sir. Boatswain, call up the men to prayer and breakfast. Always have as much care to their wounded as to your own, and if there be either young women or aged men, use them nobly. Sound drums and trumpets. St. George for Merry England. End of chapter 3.